You heard there, Edwina says people like you are wonderful, you'll be pleased to know, but she wonders whether you do almost as much harm as good. Do you do more harm than good?
No, we try to do the good thing. We try to do the Christian thing because we are a church-led charity. And no, I think we do lots and lots of positive things. I think if we weren't actually around, a lot of people would be suffering in silence, and we make sure that people get food when they need it. Surely that can only be a positive thing.
Right, and what sort of people then do come to your food bank?
A vast range of people from all over, really. We get people from a whole wide range of different backgrounds. And can I just correct Edwina in that the piece that you did there?
Yes.
About food banks getting lots of funding.
Yes.
Chelwood Food Bank Plus in Stockport doesn't get a penny of public funding from the public purse. Everything we do, every penny we find, every tin of soup we find, we have to find it ourselves.
All right.
So I think it's important to get that point across, but also to say that people from all sorts of different backgrounds come to us. It's very easy to tar everyone with the same brush, but there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds coming to us, so many different circumstances. Right,
well, let's put that... We'll come to the funding in just a moment. I mean, you're just not being very charitable, one might say, Edwina, the sorts of people that Marc has described. Where is the big society here when it comes to people who need food getting food?
Well, I think actually Marc, my fellow Scouser,
yes,
and I would agree that quite a lot of the people who come to the food banks need a lot of help. But where we disagree is the kind of help that we ought to be providing, perhaps as a society, as a public sector. And what really worries me, particularly with my background in social services in Birmingham, is that they are just being sent away with food. I know what he's going to say, which is, oh, we send them to the other agencies. But they've been sent by agencies to get the food, to get the tins. They don't get fresh food like in the picture here. Plus, Marc doesn't really know what kind of background they have because they don't have the resources to go and visit people in their homes. They are not social workers.
No, but they're there providing a service that is needed. I mean, clearly,
well,
people like Marc believe it's... You don't think they're necessary, food banks?
I don't think they're as necessary as the people who run the food banks do, but more than that, I think you've got three kinds of people who tend broadly to use them. One is people with long-term problems like alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness, release from prison, post-traumatic stress syndrome after being in the army. And we need to get more help to them. And many councils are actually allocating some of that money and they're sending it to food banks. Maybe not Salford, but some of the others are. The second group of people with short-term problems like indebtedness. And one of the things that Marc should have in his office is a debt advisor and the credit union in that area, which is not actually functioning in a whole range of other... And some of them, I'm sorry, don't need it. I sat in the car park beforehand.
Right. Who did you see? Yeah, go on.
I sat in the car park. I went early because I'm a real cynical old sod and I like to look at people and try and make my own mind up. And I watched people arrive in their cars so they can afford to put the petrol in, go in clutching their voucher, go in, say hello to Marc, who's lovely, and come out clutching the food they hadn't paid for.
So you think these people don't deserve it. What do you say to that, that actually it encourages a culture of dependency for some people who don't need it?
I think the vast majority of people who go to food banks would rather be paying money and going to a supermarket. Very few people actually, you know, love the culture of benefits, that they're revelling in the idea that they can go and get food for free.
Know?
Because we've followed many low and middle income families over years, tracking them, visiting them, looking at how they manage their family finances, and I can tell you they have a lot of a better handle on their family finances than I have on mine, because they need to, because every single penny in those families counts, and most of them are very strict with their finances. They spend what they have, but unfortunately some of them have got into debt over the last, particularly before the financial crisis. So I would dispute the idea that there are loads of feckless people who are, you know, milking food banks for all their worth.
I'm saying
but
there are lots of people who need help and they're not getting the help in the food bank.
But you are saying some of them are there who don't need it too.
Certain of it.
On the question of people who need longer term, more sophisticated help, I don't disagree. But you can't replace food that you eat with a mental health treatment programme. So, you know, these problems that Edwina is talking about are complex. You know, mental health problems, substance use problems, they're complex problems, they're fluctuating problems. People fall, you know, get better and then they get worse again. So when they're not doing so well, do we not feed them? Because actually we should be putting them into a mental health treatment programme.
I don't mind in the least if the food bank...
It's a crisis intervention.
I don't mind in the least if the food bank is crisis intervention. It's a hook to bring people in who have all sorts of problems and then to properly to start providing the care and the need that
But is that really up to people like Marc to do that? Isn't he just there for the crisis end of it, rather than then having to be... Well, we'll ask him. Do you think you should be, Marc? Do you think you should be expanding your role as such?
Well, we'd love to expand our role, but at the end of the day, we're a small charity and we're already punching above our weight. We'd love to have a debt advisor, we'd love to have a credit union. If anybody wants to fund us to do that, that's great. But also, Edwina raised the point about people getting out of cars. You know, it's very easy to say that everybody should look the same who comes to a food bank, but people who get out of cars, they might have got those cars when they were working. So the fact is that, you know, people do have cars. We also have people who've walked several miles to get to us as well, who haven't got a car and can't even afford the bus fare. So you do see a whole wide range of people.
Right, what about your point about millions of pounds of local council funds being diverted from public health budgets to pay for these food banks? My understanding, I haven't done that much research, was that actually they were mainly charities, that they didn't get money, public money for that. Are you wrong on that?
This is something fairly new, and I gather that BBC Panorama is working on this and has been taking a look at it. Manchester alone, for example, is giving about £250,000 a year now straight to food banks. I'd rather it go into an addiction clinic. I'm sure everybody would.
But what about Vidia's point that actually if people need food, you need that before you can get them to...
What do you do with them while they're struggling to eat? Yes, I don't disagree that they also need an addictions programme.
What we did in Birmingham Social Services was we actually ran day centres and we provided hot meals, which was...
It's not a dependency? So you've got people who are going to a day programme for 10 years.
There are lots of dependent people, lots of people in need. My point is...
Why is that a better form of dependency? Why is that okay?
Because they're not then being passed from pillar to post. They're not starting off with an agency, ending up with a bit of paper, a voucher that goes to a food bank, and then being told to go to another agency and so on. They're actually being looked after and given some continuing care. Care in the community is extremely difficult to do, and it needs a big professional input. If those councils are handing the money over to good people like Marc in the charities, and then not following up what they're doing, then we're getting a much worse service. That's my beef.
What about people, though, who are on benefits? I mean, if they are getting benefits from the state, why do they need to go to food banks? I mean, if they are able, and let's say they do have a large number of children, for example, and the benefits, even if they're delayed, they are getting an income and help from the state. Isn't that enough?
I mean, I think, very few people are rich on benefits. This idea that, people are living a life of luxury on benefits. Income support is on average £70 a week, and that isn't a huge amount of money.
Plus their accommodation paid.
Yes, and
plus
housing
the day
benefit.
Nursery paid. Plus an awful lot of other things
They don't
paid.
get their day nursery always paid.
Well, if they do 16 hours work a week, yes, they do.
No, they pay 30% of the cost of that nursery.
But do you not think it is humiliating that most people would probably feel ashamed of having to go to a food bank? It's not something that they do lightly.
The people that I saw bringing food were in much worse shape, much more threadbare than the people I saw taking food. And, with all due respect...
Do you use a food bank? I think
never.
Exactly. The idea that everybody who's going to the food bank doesn't...
We've become a shameless country.
I totally disagree. Having spent time with people on very low incomes, they have pride.
Well,
most of them have...
I've done the same.
Have the kind of pride that means they don't want to take benefits. Yeah. And if they're going to a food bank, it's because it's become a last...
You do not have expertise that I don't have, all right? I've done a lot of this work.
But you're suggesting that the majority of people have no qualms about using a food bank.
No,
I would say that the majority of people don't want to be there.
I didn't suggest that. I'm saying that what is actually happening is there's a process of change and transition going on in the country in which people on benefits are being pushed to get into work. But what they will find, if they actually get into work, is that they will be better off. It takes some time and it's difficult to do. One of the things I know Marc is keen to do is have a job advisor, actually but he's doing the tins of food first, and I think that's the wrong way around.
I think you have to do the tins of food first.
I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all very much. Interesting discussion. Marc there in Salford, Edwina Currie, and our guest of the day. Thank you, Vidia.
Thank you.